Let's take a couple seconds to talk about emergencies, aircraft emergencies. Nobody wants one. They tend to be few and far between, but every once in a while there is a malfunction that requires priority attention and priority handling. Your pilots are trained extensively in a variety of emergency procedures. When things just aren't going right and positive decisions have to be made in a very short period of time. Our training requirements require that we be proficient in handling a number of things. One of the key things that comes to mind is rejected takeoffs. When the airplane is taking off, we're asking the engines to do their hardest work. And the takeoff requires attaining a certain amount of speed with the airplane intact and ready to go. If a serious malfunction occurs that makes successful flight questionable, the desired thing is to reject the takeoff. However, there's a complication in that. As an airplane to reject the takeoff and stop on the runway, that has to happen at a certain speed, a certain maximum speed. And that speed is called V1. Technical jargon is V1. That's the first speed. If you exceed that speed, you really need to go flying. But actually, the commitment to go flying happens well before that. Even though that V1 speed can be very high, the reality is the higher the speed, the less successful your rejected takeoff is likely to be. Hence, the general feeling is to, I say feeling is really the requirement, is to set a much lower rejection speed. And if you get above this speed, it can be as low as 80 knots. Odds are you're better off getting it up in the air and working out your problems airborne. The time of takeoff on a typical flight is just really a few seconds. It might be 10 to 12 seconds. And a large number of malfunctions can occur in that time. And to do it successfully, to reject the takeoff successfully as the airplane's accelerating, to get it from a high speed to zero speed on the runway available, under the conditions, snow, rain, or whatever, that is a split-second decision. I call it the billion-dollar decision. Theoretically, if the airplane costs $500 million or close to that, and depending on the cargo it has and the lives of the people, it's a billion-dollar decision. And oftentimes, this has to be made. The captain has to make this decision probably in about 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds. And because of that, and because of the ease of which you can make a mistake, general feeling is better to get the thing up in the air if it's flyable and work it out. Do what you need to do, and then come back in for a safe landing. We do a lot of training in rejected takeoffs. You can't train for everything, but you can go through the basic procedures. So your pilots are extensively trained in rejected takeoffs. Another area that gets a lot of attention is that having to do with engines. Engine fires or engine failures. But again, on takeoff, most particularly on takeoff where it's most critical. And again, as I said earlier, that your plane is designed to actually function with the 50% power loss. So if you've got two engines and you lose one, you can do everything on the one remaining engine. If that's the case, depending on the airplane, depending on the weight, your pilots are going to be very, very busy. Once again, if you're able to stop the airplane before that V1 speed, that engine failure happens early, great, you can just bring it to a stop. However, if it happens later, and more than likely it's usually later, you're going to take it flying. And once the airplane gets up with the single engine, the pilots will declare an emergency to let air traffic control what the problem, let the aircraft control know what the problem is. They'll get to a safe altitude, execute a number of procedures, and set up for a return. And this is something that's really important, that nothing is done off the cuff. There are some memory items and some things we have to know cold and just do instinctively. But every procedure is backed up by a checklist. It is important to complete these checklists. The Checklists have been developed after consultation with the aircraft manufacturer, the engineers, on what you need to do to correct the discrepancy. And if you've got a serious one, you really got to coordinate with the crew. So there's a big teamwork effort that's involved. The crew has to cooperate. They have to follow procedures, written procedures, which can come in the form of a written checklist or a series of steps that are seen on an electronic screen. But it's important for both crew members or all crew members to be on the same page when they do something, particularly if it involves an engine failure, particularly if it involves a problem with an engine that requires one of the engines to be shut down. That is where everything slows down. You'll see that it's important that both pilots, or all the pilots, all crew members, agree which is the engine to be shut down and which is the engine to be left running. There have been problems in the past where one of the crew members shut down the wrong engine, the functioning engine, hence you're flying with no engines. And that's a problem with crew coordination. So it's important that they be on the same page, following the checklist methodically. Engine out, engine fire. There's a lot of training on decompression. So when you're sitting in the back there and they say to put, wear your seatbelts, but in the case of a rapid decompression, oxygen masks come down, put your oxygen mask on first. That's for, people traveling with children or those who can't do it themselves. That's important because if it happens at high altitude, you're likely to pass out if the cabin altitude actually exceeds a certain amount. So if the airplane is not able to maintain pressure, everyone gets on oxygen that's in the whole airplane, and the steady flow of oxygen will keep you awake. You'll be fine. But it's important to do that right away. So they get a training in decompression. Typically, the requirement is to be able to get any commercial aircraft from whatever its cruising altitude is down to an altitude of 14,000 feet, typically within about 4 minutes. A rapid descent so that everyone can breathe. Hypoxia is a bad thing. If you lose oxygen, you'll just pass out. But when we do have emergencies and we have to work together, assuming you've got a good crew, we've got to tell other people what's going on. So here's where you'll alert air traffic control, they'll let them know, and typically they'll move heaven and earth so that the emergency aircraft can land and go where it needs to go and do whatever it needs to do to keep everyone safe. That even includes breaking some, pre-established rules. Our mandate is to do whatever is necessary to save the airplane and protect everything and everyone that's on board. So that's just a little talk about some emergencies that may come up. But teamwork is important, cooperation is important, and discipline is important. The discipline to take your time to read the checklist, to do everything properly, and alert ground stations as to what is going on so that they can get the resources necessary to help the airplane land and evacuate safely. Thanks very much.